All right. Looks like we're all set, Sean.
Okay, Doug. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. It's our June monthly marketing meeting. I'm Sean Bailey, editor-in-chief at Horse's Mouth. I'm here with Devin Kropp, associate editor, Horse's Mouth, and co-author along with me of Hack Proof Your Life Now. Anyway, welcome. It's June, entering the 6th month of the year. So our meetings always start off very broadly because ultimately we get down to the nitty-gritty actions that we want Horse's Mouth master members and advisor client members to be taking in the coming months. But we invite other people to, watch from home, and we start off our first section more broadly. So it's a particular topic that anyone can benefit from. But before we do that, Doug, I have a couple of survey questions I want to put in front of everyone who is able to vote at this moment. And I'm curious, you've all been hearing the talk about artificial intelligence and AGI, artificial generative intelligence, and ChatGPT. And we've been paying attention to some of this as well here. And curious, I'm ready to start taking the temperature, so to speak, of our audience relating to both their interest levels and, whether they've dabbled around in it or not. I see some of you are reading and answering already. But question one is, there's a lot of talk about the potential and challenges of AGI, artificial generative intelligence, such as ChatGPT. Question: have you tried using any programs that are based on ChatGPT? And the second question, and that's a yes or no question, of course. The second question is, are you interested in learning more about how these new AI tools can be used in your practice, particularly practice management and marketing and communications? So take a look at those two questions. Give us your answers. Doug, keep it up there for a second or two more. So it looks like on question one, the bottom line of question one is, have you tried using any of these programs? So about 28% say yes, 72% say no. And then on the second question, interest in it, particularly around practice management and marketing communications, an overwhelming 94% say yes, and 6% say no. Well, that's good information for us. Thanks so much for that. Now, back to this month's marketing meeting. As I was saying before, we start off big, and then we narrow it down to very specific marketing activities that we're recommending people at Horse's Mouth, people with master memberships, implement every month. So Devin, part one, well, let me just tell everybody, part one is going to be about atomic habits and creating atomic habits this summer. Part two is going to be about your June and July marketing activities. And then part three, we always have some member marketing questions. So Devin, let's start now with part one. Creating an atomic marketing habit this summer. What's going on here? What do you got in mind?
So I'm sure many of you have probably read Atomic Habits by James Clear. And we were, talking about different themes that we wanted to cover in these meetings. And, the whole point of us creating this meeting was actually to help all of our members create a marketing habit by coming to this meeting and talking about marketing. But we want us to take that a step further and kind of challenge everybody or encourage everybody here to form some sort of new marketing habit this summer that they're going to carry through the summer and reevaluate in the fall, and hopefully, carry through the rest of the year as well. So we were kind of inspired by Clear's book about creating habits and how you can kind of create these smaller habits that eventually build over time for you to, have this larger habit that becomes part of your everyday life. So we first, I think, just for those who haven't or aren't familiar with the book, we kind of we'll go over some of like the key principles that Clear talks about in the book. And then we'll talk about different habits that you could form. What are some ideas of marketing habits that you can start thinking about this summer? And then, how you can use your master membership, your advisor client membership to help you achieve that habit. And then we'll talk about, us all checking in at the end of the summer and seeing who is really stuck to their habits. So to start,
I just want to interrupt one quick second.
Of course.
Atomic Habits is a, hugely successful book. I don't know, it's been on the New York Times bestseller list for, I think, more than a couple of years. I listened to a lot of books. I've listened to it at least twice and actually bought a copy of the book and went through it some more. So I love it. Can folks who are on the call here using the raise your hand feature indicate if you have read James Clear's Atomic Habits? You go to reactions. In case you haven't done this before, reactions is one of the areas there across usually the bottom of your Zoom player. You click on reactions, and then it gives you the chance to raise your hand. Looks like we got 6, we got 7. People are finding it now. Give it a second or two more. All right, so it's about 25% of our audience that's on the Zoom right now. Devin, I apologize. Go right ahead.
No, great. I'm glad that we saw that. So, so since the majority of us maybe haven't read it, I'm sure some of you are familiar with the ideas. It's kind of been in many articles have been written about it, but we'll quickly kind of go over what the principles are, and then we can talk about, what kind of marketing habits we can look at for the next few months. So Clear kind of starts with the idea that we should make small improvements over time. So sometimes one of the issues with trying to form a habit is we pick something that is too overwhelming, too much to take on at that time, and we end up failing at making it a habit because it's too much. So he talks about something called the 1% rule. It's all about small increments, building over time. So starting with getting 1% better each day rather than going 100% right from the get-go and getting kind of burnt out. Over time, these kind of small little improvements kind of build on each other, and eventually you have kind of this big result coming in at the end of all of your little small improvements day after day after day after day. The next kind of principle in the book is about habit stacking, and so this is a way to kind of make sure that you're building time into your schedule to achieve this habit. And Clear recommends pairing that habit with something that you already do every day. So a habit that you've already established in your life, pairing this new habit with it. So I think one of the examples he uses in the book is like, if you want to start flossing, you pair that with brushing your teeth. It makes sense. Some other examples are if you want to start reading every day, maybe you kind of pair that with drinking your first cup of coffee, a habit that you've already established. Let's pair something new with that. And we can talk about how that applies to marketing in a little bit. You also want to have kind of a specific plan for your habit and when you're going to implement it and when you're going to take those actions to follow through. You want to be as kind of specific as you can here. So instead of saying something like, I want to read more, I'm going to read for 30 minutes every day at 9:00 p.m. And you can see there how that allows you to actually see if you're achieving your goal or make a more sticky habit rather than just saying, I'm going to read more and I'm just going to find time in my day to read for, however much time I have. But by having that specific time that you're going to do it and the time frame that you're going to do it helps it become a little bit stickier. Tracking your habits is important too. There are plenty of apps out there you can use to, kind of check off that you did it this day. You can also use pen and paper, your calendar. There's plenty of ways to track that, but there is kind of like that reward system built into us that when we're able to, check off the to-do box or say we did it, releases a little bit of that dopamine and helps you continue, doing those habits over time. And similarly to that too, thinking about kind of rewards that you can create for achieving your habits. So say, you've you've done it 3 or 4 days in a row. And once you do that, you're going to reward yourself, with, $5 or something like that, where you're giving yourself a reward to look forward to, and to keep your momentum going, over time with that habit building. And then, of course, at the end, we talk about reflecting on your habit, reviewing what worked, thinking about what you need to adjust to continue moving forward, and what kind of you're next going to build on to, achieve whatever your long-term goal is. So really the idea here being, let's start small. Let's do something that's achievable. Let's be specific. And then let's review that at the kind of the end of whatever time frame we're stating. So here in our example, we were talking about, it's summer. Maybe things are a little bit slower in some areas. Let's pick a small habit that everyone here on this call wants to commit to. You can each pick your own habit. It can be, personal, it can be business related. But let's do something small, and let's kind of come back, in our September meeting and see how everybody has done with their habit, and, if it's grown from that kind of initial goal that you set out and what you're looking forward to next. So I think in our next kind of little section here, we'll talk about different marketing habits that you can think about to kind of incorporate into your business. And again, it doesn't have to be necessarily marketing specific, but I think because we're here in a marketing meeting, it makes sense for us to think about how we can kind of improve our marketing habit over the next few months. So some ideas here are, again, like maybe you want to improve your social media presence based on kind of what I just outlined. That's way too broad of a habit to form. So instead, it could be something like, I'm going to spend 10 minutes connecting with people on LinkedIn every day. That could be, one of the habits that you're going to do. It could be, I'm going to spend 30 minutes a day immersing myself in LinkedIn or Facebook advertising and really begin to learn, social media marketing from that area. It can be, you really want to do a webinar in the fall. I'm going to spend 15 minutes a day learning the Savvy Social Security presentation. I'm going to review it every day for 15 minutes. So come fall, I'm confident and ready to go. Those are some kind of ideas of marketing habits that you can include. It could also be something, I'm going to spend 10 minutes a day reading marketing content that exists out there. If it's something that you, want to be up on the trends about, but maybe it's kind of fallen to the wayside, it can be as simple as reading and learning, and just committing to making that a habit for the next few months. Sean, anything to add there?
Yeah, thanks, Devin. I did want to point out that this monthly marketing meeting, the creation of it was actually driven by, I believe, our reading of James Clear's Atomic Habit, because it occurred to me, how our advisors, our horse's mouth advisors and others regularly scheduling a monthly or weekly marketing meeting. I mean, in fact, we did some surveying on that, and I believe that around 25% of advisors hold regular weekly marketing meetings, and then a larger percent hold monthly marketing meetings. And our whole idea here, and we're glad to have a good turnout today, because some of you have been coming month after month, but the idea is definitely as a habit, as a sort of executive skill, because you guys are running multifaceted, multidisciplined business when you're a financial advisor, and marketing is one important piece of it, especially if you're interested in maintaining or growing the size of your business. And so, the sort of executive habit of scheduling a certain amount of time each week, which is what I would recommend, but at a minimum each month, to clear, some time in your calendar, either by yourself or by some with yourself and or some with your team, to literally go over, what marketing has happened recently. What are we planning for the next 30 days? What are we planning for the next 60 days and long term? And to make that part of your business habit as, a sort of standing meeting. And that's why we come together each month to try and give you the opportunity to be exposed to some things that we're recommending in our monthly marketing meeting, because we've always felt like, listen, advisors are really busy, but if we can tee up a marketing game plan for you to execute on, which we're going to get into in the second half of this meeting, if we do that, and you do those activities, I mean, that's one thing I've been, deeply involved in marketing for 30 years now. And, if I had to extract one principle, it is that activity triggers sort of action and reaction, that you do stuff, you put things out, stuff comes back to you. And that's, and so, even when you're entirely unsure, you're not focused or whatever the case, but or you're distracted, whatever's happening with your business, but we give you these certain very specific activities to do that we're about to talk to you about for the month of June. And the idea is make them a habit and just do these things, even if it's not strategic, it's purely tactical because you're, distracted, whatever the case may be. You do these things. We know because we got, case studies, and we've been talking with advisors about this for 20 years. You do these things, stuff will happen. Is it the best stuff? Is it the biggest, most perfect stuff? No, but but it's a baseline of stuff. And if you build that habit and you keep doing these things, month in, month out, week in and week out, as Clear talks, it becomes sort of habit stacking. You build momentum, you build behavior changes, and it leads to results. So, that would be my comment, Devin, about this. And we should come back, I'm great. We're gonna do this over the next 3 months, get some people to pick some other smaller marketing habits, I think is great. Just to loop back to my comments or curiosity about artificial intelligence, and there's a lot of tools that are out there right now that can actually be paired with habits. One of the ones that I'm very interested in is one that Doug Pierce has turned me on to. It's called video.ai, right? VIDYO.ai, right?
You got it. Yep.
Yeah. So this is an amazing thing. If you suppose you're doing a webinar or, recording a video or whatever, you upload your recording of your video, and the artificial intelligence program that's in there goes through it very quickly, and it identifies clips to extract out. And they're about 30 to a minute and 120, about 30 to 80 seconds long. And it chunks up, an hour-long webinar presentation could be chunked up into like 16, 18 clips. With some of your audio being printed to the screen as well. And you're not every single last one is perfect, but they're very, very good. And it just takes a few clicks. And the next thing you know, you've got this 30, 60, 90-second clip of you talking about something very relevant that you can then put on your social, put on your website, share in an email. So I've been playing around with that. And, that could be a kind of marketing habit, especially if you are doing webinars, which I hope you are. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. I never miss a chance to say, obviously educational presentations, education marketing is huge. We believe in it strongly here. Nitrogen, formerly known as Riskalyze, had a study this week. Sam Rodriguez, did I hear him right? Video.ai. Sam Rodriguez there in Dallas, Texas, I think, obviously is playing around with video.ai. Yes, you heard me right, Sam. Anyway, it creates these amazing clips, and you can, use them very effectively. And you could then, make that a habit, that, whenever you record a video or whenever you put on a webinar, you're going to make sure that you run it through video and extract some shareable clips. And believe me, this stuff will sort of do much better on your social media. Devin will tell you this. This will do a gazillion times better on your Facebook and LinkedIn if it's actually you, as opposed to it being, a package of pre-recorded videos that you've, purchased from a vendor, which are perfectly fine, but it's a lot better for you and your audience and your brand if it's actually you talking about this stuff. But I got slightly distracted because I was going to talk about the webinars. And one other thing I wanted to say about the Riskalyze nitrogen study was them pointing out that super hyper growth firms growing at 40% a year, are are they've heavily embraced the use of webinars in the last couple of years, and are attributing that to a portion of their growth. And we're not surprised by that, because we have worked with many of you who are master members in the webinar program that we put on a couple of years ago. But educational presentations also, hugely back, and I hope you're looking forward to implementing more education marketing later this year. So Devin, I'll stop there, and we'll move on to part 2, right?
Yeah, perfect segue into kind of thinking about educational presentations we're going to be putting on, but also educational content to be sending out over the next few months. And going back to what we were just talking about, your habit can be as simple as, if you haven't, adopted the marketing calendar that we talk about every month here, your habit could be as simple as, you're going to send out this communication piece every single month. So don't feel like you have to pick this grand habit that's going to take all this time. It can be a monthly thing where, you say, now's the time I'm going to start doing this, because it's so easy, it's so effective. And like Sean was saying, it's all about taking action. So action comes back to you. And this is one of the easiest things that you can do. So we will start with your June marketing activities. It's June 1st here right now. And our theme for June is estate planning. I'm just going to share the reprint that we have picked out for this month. It's about your will and choosing an executor, and what happens if the executor does not follow what's laid out in the will, or choose bad executor. So this is a nice piece to send out to clients and prospects to start talking about estate planning. This is the PDF version of the reprint here. And as a reminder, if you attended our last month or caught the replay, we now have web reprints for all of these as well. So you can send them out via email. We have like an HTML kind of setup of these reprints as well. But right here, this is the PDF version. Again, it will be with all of your information here. This is our sample advisor, but this would be filled out with your photo, your contact information, your logo, your disclosures at the end. But it's a really nice PDF that kind of tells different stories about people who have had executors not follow their wishes and what happens to their loved ones. And then it kind of goes into some general suggestions in choosing an executor, and having open communication with that person while you're still around, so you can make sure that your wishes are honored. So this is our article reprint for the month of June. If you haven't set this up already to send out, this is what we'll be talking about. And Sean, I think you wanted to possibly talk about the presentation available.
I did, Devin, thank you. Let me get over to my share. So yes, coming off of my comments about putting on presentations, I just wanted to share with you our presentation for this month, which Devin is entitled, oh, there it is. Thank you. Let me pop this open for you. You can see I was flying through the slides, and that's the very last one. Start with your free estate planning assessment. It's actually not a bad slide to start on for our conversation here, because one of the chief reasons we recommend that there's really 2 reasons to do educational marketing or educational presentations, right? One is to continue to educate your clients. We know that clients expect this. A lot of advisors, overlook it. They do very well, do a very good job, a bunch of other areas. But they don't always have regular educational presentations, but they can be very, very helpful, very useful in terms of building loyalty and referrals and more assets. But when you're building, if you're in the business building mode, we definitely think you need to be putting on educational presentations. And every presentation does have a final, from a business development perspective, has an absolute goal, and that is to get the people who are listening to the presentation to come in and have a one-on-one meeting with you. So in this, they're all geared toward that. And in this one, there's a free estate planning assessment. Every program that we have invites people to come in for some version of that. If it's Social Security, it's come in for a Social Security analysis. If it's Medicare, it's come in for a discussion of your Medicare. If it's long-term care, I think we have what we call an overview meeting and a checklist that's associated with it. There's all sorts of, if it's taxes, it's come in and get a holistic plan analysis, right? But anyway, I just wanted to show you the slides quickly in reverse. But this is, savvy generational planning, why estate planning, why now? You talk about what we're going to cover. You're hitting on a variety of things that, we all as financial advisors would expect, an estate planning presentation to discuss. It just moves along like this, and I will stop there. This is just to give you an idea. Again, as master members, this is available to you through the master member portal under the Savvy Generational Planning. And I also wanted to show you that, most of the presentations also come with notes that you give out in your you give out before your presentation, and you tell your audience, look, I want you to pay attention to the presentation. Don't get caught up in writing down a bunch of notes and get distracted. We have some notes already available for you. And in fact, here they are. It's a PDF, which if you're doing live and in person, you print these things out. It's kind of covers the main points that were in the presentation so that your audience doesn't need to worry about it. This has got some very good stuff on the second page. It's got a glossary. And of course, you see down here, this is my personalization deck, but yours would be there, of course. And nearly all our presentations have these notes that go along with it. And I recommend that whenever you're putting on a presentation that you include these notes as well. So that's it on the generational front. Devin, back to you.
Sean, there's a question from Rich. He is asking, do you recommend giving the notes at the beginning of the presentation or the end?
Yeah, that's a good question. And my answer is at the beginning, because we want the audience to pay attention to the presentation, and we don't want them, flailing around, scribbling on pieces of paper, trying to take their own notes. We want to tell them, look, we've got you covered. So don't worry about taking the notes. And this gives me an opportunity to point out a presentation tactic that I really like. It may not be for everybody, but there's a guy named Kevin Lynch down in Princeton, New Jersey. And Kevin, when he puts on presentations, and he does a fair amount of live presentations over the years at his local library on a variety of topics, Social Security, college planning. I think he does estate planning too. But anyway, at the beginning of his presentation, right after he starts, he leans over and he says, before we get going, I just want to check with people here. Is there anybody here in the audience who has, just an absolute burning question that you want to be sure we cover? And sometimes there are people say, yeah, I do have a question. And they give the question, and Kevin will say, often he'll say, we're going to cover that. Don't worry. Thank you. If someone raises a question that's not covered in the presentation, it gives them an opportunity to say, that is very highly specific to your case. And, as I'm about to say here in a minute, at all my education presentations, I offer one-on-one follow-up meetings. And that question will be one that we would dive into in person because it is, highly specific question. And Kevin's thinking about this, which I like, is that some people come to presentations and, they're coming to that Social Security presentation because they just learned about this thing called the WEP GPO, and their spouse was a teacher for a certain number of years, and they're totally confused about what it's going to do to their Social Security benefits. And if they don't, if that question isn't answered, or they're just like, they're so driven by that question that they're just on the edge of their seat waiting for it to come up in the presentation. And Kevin feels like if you give them a chance to, or kind of a release valve to say, yeah, I have a question about WEP GPO. And then Kevin could say, yeah, we're going to cover that in the last portion of the presentation. Or WEP GPO, very technical question, hardly applies to anybody. I'm glad you raised it, and we can talk about that one-on-one afterwards. And then everybody feels, it's like a release valve, and they're not on the edge of their seats thinking about this one question and not fully absorbing what it is that Kevin is trying to communicate at the presentation. So it's a very nice particular tactic I thought I would share. And by the way, it's one of many, as an example of the kinds of things we'll be going over this summer in our program called Liftoff. The Financial Educator Marketing Coaching Program starts June 21st, goes all the way to August 16th. We're meeting once a week for 90 minutes, and we'll tell you more about that later if you're not familiar with it. But Devin, back to you.
Thank you. And so those are our activities. We're talking all about estate planning. And then in July, we move into caregiving as our theme for the month of July. And I will pull up the reprint for July. It's called How to Start the Family Caregiving Discussion. This is a great opening piece for clients and prospects who maybe have not spoken about caregiving with their family members or their loved ones who are, potentially going to be caring for them in a later stage of life. And it kind of goes through the different areas that you want to be talking about, how to have a productive conversation around this, because it obviously can be a very emotional and difficult conversation. So giving an outline of points that you would want to cover and making sure that you stay kind of on track with these different areas. So we talk about medical, legal, financial, personal, and then it also kind of goes through, some resistance that might occur in the conversation. And this is actually, a lot of these are more geared towards the person who will become the caregiver rather than that person being cared for. So this is, might be something that you're going to connect with, clients who have parents who are now aging and need to think about being cared for. But it goes through kind of some of these areas of resistance, ways to anticipate them and responses or ways to express these concerns. And you as the advisor can really kind of position yourself as kind of the team captain here, right? Getting the parents and the children together to have this conversation and being a resource for them. And it kind of starts with sending out a piece like this where you introduce the topic of this is something that you're most likely going to need or you're going to be doing for a parent or a loved one. Let's make sure we can all get on the same page now before it's an issue, and try to anticipate some of the problems that we might see in the future and have a plan in place before it's too late. Because often we see this conversation doesn't happen until someone needs care. And then it's often too late to have a real productive conversation about, what the person who needs to be cared wants and what the caregiver wants to get out of this. So this is kind of a good starting point of how to start that conversation. And then we also have plenty of other resources in our long-term care program, which Sean's going to come and talk about the presentation there, but there's other reprints, other handouts that you can also use to supplement this reprint for those clients and prospects who this is, an issue for. So Sean, I'll let you talk about the presentation there.
Yeah, thanks, Devin. And I do want to pull up that presentation, and I haven't pulled it up in advance, but while I'm looking for it, I wanted to say that the caregiving presentation, it's not necessarily a happy topic, but for some of you out there who have already gone through it, as I have with my family and my wife's family, it is so important that, a lot of families just kind of continue to carry on like they were when they were a nuclear family, and yet 30 or 40 years have passed, and the children are now adults, and the parents are now, toward the end of their journey here on Earth. And sometimes everybody has continued that relationship, that child-parent relationship, and no one has really taken the time to recognize that mom and dad may not be filled with piss and vinegar like they once were, and that we need to have some honest conversations about, how they're going to be taken care of in the last portion of their life. And a fair number of families don't ever have that conversation, And in the presentation, we talk about how all of this is very unhappy for all families. But what you're trying to do as the financial advisor here is increase the possibility that your clients may have these conversations so that when the inevitable does happen, it's not as bad. The sting isn't as bad as it can be. And some of you have been in probably some pretty crazy situations where, mom and dad die and no planning was done, or they get to the end and, suddenly, somebody reports that, your mom was seen walking down the street in her bathrobe, and they get into the house and, there's nothing in the refrigerator, or the gas stove is still turned on, all these crazy things. And then that kind of is a crisis that causes the adult children to sort of snap out of it and realize that they're not 14 and 16, but they're now in their 50s and 60s, and they're elderly parents, that we need to have an honest conversation about how care is going to happen in the end of their life, and how it's going to be paid for, and who's going to be responsible. And so, like I said, it's not a happy topic, but you're really doing your community and your clients a service by putting it out there and getting people to think about it in advance and have a conversation. And so that's what the presentation is about. And I'm having a difficult time at the moment. Getting.
I have it up, Sean, if you want.
Okay.
I can
All right.
share. Just
Yeah,
give me
okay,
one second here.
Yeah. Oh, I see why I was having a problem. Yeah. Go ahead, Devin. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, no problem. One moment. Okay. It should be there. You're seeing that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is just the open. Why don't you just fly through the slides a little bit. We'll talk more about this next month, since it's really the one for July, but it's good for people to be, just keep going through them. But you can see these kinds of things come along. There's particular challenges, and so that was the cold open we had there, and that's 4 keys to making a difference in a family caregiving challenge. And we step you through this problem you see there. It's stress-inducing, complex, and then we move through the keys. Move through the keys. I have to say, I think it's a very good presentation. It's very helpful. And, we step people through the different aspects of this problem. And at the end,
let's fly through to get towards the end. We can see the.
Yeah, so it's like, toward the end, it's like, come in, we're not holding you, the advisor, out there as the end all and be all of solving this problem for your clients. You don't really want to be involved in that, but you probably want to play a particular role. One role, at least you can play for some of your clients, if you'd like, would be to kind of like, head up the team, especially when some difficult situations are discovered. For instance, Debbie Taylor was talking the other day about, it was about 6 months ago, she had a client came in, a very, very big client, multiple 8-figure client, who was married, but he was very old, like in his 80s. And it turned out he had nothing. He had no will. He had no insurance. He had a ton of money socked away in some accounts, and that Debbie was able to help him with. But, he was looking at, the final days of his life, more or less, and none of the planning had been done. And so Debbie really did have to act as the sort of, the quarterback, while she pulled in attorneys and accountants and all sorts of other people to prepare this family so that, they didn't have a tax day. Debbie leads with the tax guidance, and they didn't have a tax disaster or just a disaster in general from a planning perspective, so that, the spouse would be taken care of and everybody else, and that all the right planning documents were put in place. And so, that's it. I think, Devin, is there another slide here?
Yeah, there's a couple more.
Yeah, I just wanted to get to what that whole thing about the very last slide, what we invite them to come in for. I think it's like an overview meeting, a caregiving plan, right? Start the plan, keep going. request a caregiving plan overview meeting. And so this is something we've created where it's an overview. You say someone comes in, they've seen this, let's sit down, talk about it. It's kind of a checklist type thing where you're asking them. For your existing clients, you probably know the answers to these things and you wouldn't probably have this kind of meeting, though you might. But for a new client, you might be, or somebody who came in, as a result of you putting on this presentation, and you kind of step them through this checklist. And basically the output there, where they're not particularly your client, is that they've had a good conversation with a financial professional about this problem. They've gone through this checklist, which may have identified things like, hey, you need to see an estate planning attorney. You need to get together with an accountant. You need to find an elder care manager, whatever the case may be. So it's not like you're being put on the hook to solve this multidisciplinary caregiving problem that may be out there. So anyway, we discuss this more next month, but that's what's coming up as well. So Devin, before we move on to we're finished here with this part, right?
Yep.
We have any questions? Yep. I just wanted to, I might have pointed this out last month, but I was about to share it before. Oh yeah, here it is. Let me see. This is our new thing called Time in the Market presentation. I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention because it's a great thing to share with your clients and prospects. If particularly, I don't know how the markets did today, but things have kind of been so bad this year, but we get into one of these periods where the markets get really choppy and you've got a nervous Nelly client who just wants to pull the plug. And so we have this thing called the Time in the Markets and the Power of Compounding. Obviously, it's good to make other points as well with this, but it's new. We haven't given it too much publicity. We have put a link to it in the master member area. On the second page is simply this chart that shows the power of compounding. I think some of you may have seen some things like this similar over the years, but it's a nice thing to know that it's in your toolbox to share with clients. It's another type of thing you can put out from time to time instead of an article reprint, for instance. If the markets have been choppy, you might, this comes out as a PDF. You can post it on your website. You can put it in an email. You can print it out and share in one-on-one meetings and that sort of thing. And so I just wanted to take this opportunity to let you know about that again as one of the many resources available to you as a master member. All right, Devin. So,
okay, our part 3 is our member question. So I think the first question you were going to take, Sean, which was how much should I be spending on marketing?
Yeah.